Hello, it's Friday and it's 4 p.m. That means it's time for Jamarl Thomas and I to sort out the news stories with the of the week. And of course, you know, there's one big one, but there's a lot of stuff going on. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, and there's been a lot of stuff going on here. I mean, last week we were talking about. I mean, let me just say this: you got to say one thing for sure. If you do this cat podcast stuff, Trump keeps you busy. Last week it was, will there be a cataclysmic war against Iran? This week, is there a cataclysmic economic shift coming to the to the global economy? Every week there's a cataclysmic. Yeah, I guess that's the word of the week with Trump, cataclysmic. Oh, by the way, before we get started, number one, let me tell you, we run this on both of our channels. Jamarl Thomas has his own channel. For those of you who've been living under a rock for the past few years, that you can just search his name, Jamarl Thomas, and find it. He's got a great morning show every morning from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern time. It's excellent. It's growing. I never miss it. A lot of good guests. And of course, I'm on there every now and then. If you are watching it on Jamarl's channel and you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure you're a subscriber on mine. If you're watching it here and you haven't subscribed to Jamarl's channel, make sure at some point you go over so that everybody can find the latest of what's happening. Okay, let's get going. So last week it was cataclysmic, possible nuclear war, World War III with Iran. That's so last week. This week we got tariffs, the tariff wars, and I was just talking to a friend of mine. I'm in the boating, and my buddy has a boating mechanic shop, and I go over there and just hang around, watch him work on outboard motors, whatever, right? And he says, well, Garland, I think it's a negotiating ploy, and that he's going to get these countries to come in and negotiate. And I was like, okay, if it was one country, yeah. But when you do it to 100 and all of the countries, however many that is, even literally ones that don't have people on, we have literally put tariffs against countries that have no people whatsoever on the island countries, as it were. If it's even a country, because if it don't have people, who really calls it a country, right? But at any rate, so I don't know, some may say it's negotiating ploy, whatever it is, it has already had dramatic actions on the market, freaked a lot of people out. Jamarl Thomas, your thoughts on the Trump tariff wars?
I think it's going to be two things. One, well, three things. One, if I give Trump the better version of this, right, the best possible version of what he's trying to accomplish, this notion of, okay, we need to bring manufacturing back into the United States. All right, that is a long-term process. And that is a process that takes place over the course of maybe a decade, if not longer. Globalization has been going on for 50 years. And so him trying to wave a magic wand and it's all right, we're just going to bring this stuff back into the US. Good luck. I don't buy the premise. I don't believe for a moment that Donald Trump is going to be able to reshape the global order in this way and bully, especially big entities like the European Union, or for that matter, China. I think they're going to take issue with the fact that he's doing it. And fact is, there are a lot of industries that we just don't have anymore in the United States that would take a long period of time for this level of re-entrenchment into America. Two, let's be very clear that a lot of this has to do with Donald Trump raising revenue to justify a massive tax cut that is going to go to the rich, whereas everybody else, is going to have to pay the cost of the tariffs. Tariffs are taxes, and those taxes are effectively going to have to be paid on somebody, meaning the amount of money that we're going to have to pay for goods and services is going to go up. And in the same way that American businesses is going to say, hey, these foreign products are now more expensive, maybe we can raise our products ourselves. Either way you look at it, everybody else is going to pay the cost for what Donald Trump is doing, while simultaneously the Republicans are going to be like, hey, we can now give a massive tax cut because of all the revenue that we've effectively raised. But again, we are the ones that are paying for the tariffs, while they are the ones that are going to get the tax cuts, meaning the top 1%, the rich, the billionaires, millionaires, effectively the people who put all their money into Donald Trump's G-string. And on the third front, we've tried this before. In the 1930s, we had this, what is the Smoot-Hawley Act. And this was at the time during the Great Depression where they were like, okay, we need to protect ourselves. We need to add more protectionism into it. This is sevenfold what the Smoot-Hawley Act was. And it failed miserably. Not just failed, it is believed that made the Great Depression that much worse. And so on multiple levels, this is like voodoo economics. It is going to fail miserably. And it is believed that many Republicans are thinking their ass is up in the midterms for this. I could be wrong. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, and let's not forget what happened, because you had the Great Depression. You had, what's his name? I forgot his name. The Republican that was in, was it Wilson? Hoover was in. And the Depression, yeah, Hoover, yeah. And 1929 was when that hit. And then Hoover and his crew, they were they called back then what we call kind of neoliberalism. The term they used back then was called laissez-faire, right? Politics, right? It was, and it was like, yeah, let's just, the government should be out of everything, blah, blah, blah. And so they doubled down on that. What happened? 29 hit, 1930, Hoover and the conservatives said, what we'll do is we need to balance the budget. You know what they always think, we need to balance the budget, we need to do this and that. And then of course, as you said, whatever it was, Smoot-Hawley Act, whatever it is, we're going to do this, and those things together made it worse. And that's when, what's his name, in 32, 33, whatever, that's when FDR won in, the landslide of all landslides, right? Their actions made it worse. But that was then, this is now. Number one, even let's say it had worked then, did or didn't work. Here's the reality of things. We have a total different global economy than we did back then. Number one. Number two, it is, well, everybody's screwing us over and taking advantage of us, and we got to act. Well, here's the bottom line. Since 1945, who set up all the trade organizations? Who set up the global economy, the global infrastructure? The United States set up all this global infrastructure. We made, the US is the reserve dollar. We got these trade organizations. We got free trade, global. That was us. That was neoliberalism. So we set up the US a global economic infrastructure to work to our advantage. And we literally would sanction people using SWIFT because we were in control of who could spend money, how they could spend it, who they could buy from, all these, we're sanctioning. So we set up a global economic infrastructure. We use it punitively against our adversaries. We tell everybody they have to do it, and everybody's going by the rules that we set. And we wake up one day and say, you guys are all taking advantage of us. We're changing rules. The truth of the matter is this, aren't they all? They've been forced by us to go by the global infrastructure and rules that we set up. And now it's not working for us anymore. Well, why? Because the nature of our economic system is predatory, it's monopolistic, it's greedy. Oh, we got to move over here so we'll have cheaper labor. So we move to China, we have cheaper labor. Oh, China's taking advantage of us. You know what I mean? Everything you read here says the United States set up the rules, other people went by the rules, and now we're like, they're all taking advantage of us. We've got to act in a way to stop them from taking advantage of us when we set up the entire system, force them to go by it.
Yes. Everything that came out of your mouth is perfectly correct. Agreed. I mean, like, it's pretty amazing, right? Like J.D. Vance, when he gave that speech, I forget where he was when he gave the speech. He said the exact same thing. J.D. Vance's thing was, we believe that we could stay on top, meaning us and the Europeans, that we could stay on top of this economic chain, and that we would come up with the designs, and that they would make the products, and we would remain rich, and they would remain poor, and they would just continue doing that in perpetuity. The speech was astonishing because he's like, J.D. Vance has a knack for saying the quiet part out loud.
Yes,
doing so without any F's to gives.
Yeah.
And Vance was like, We believed that this was going to be this way forever in perpetuity. And somewhere along the way, it changed. You had some of the countries came up and started making the products and started making the designs. And this no longer works for us. And so we need to now reshape the global order to be in our best interest. Effectively, globalism no longer is in our best interest in the way that it operates. So we need to somehow reshape the world order in this way. And Trump alone is going to somehow do this. I don't think he is. I mean, like, think of the amount of time it takes manufacturing to come into a country, to grow and to build. And we are going to expect, with the level of volatility, with the uncertainty that Donald Trump presents in the way that he just out the blue comes up, war against the world. Didn't say I was going to do this, but here it is. And then the tariffs that he's talking about is not the trade barriers that the other countries had for the United States. I mean, South Africa, 34%, really? Or China, 54%. Vietnam is like 60 something percent. Like, what he was doing was he was taking the difference in, let's say, the difference in trade between a country divided by, I think it's something like the amount of trade imports. It was something to that effect. It was just the difference between like imports versus the trade difference. And that was the way he was coming up with the number. It had nothing to do with those countries' own trade barriers. Donald Trump is trying to get some kind of advantage. And it's like, I'm open to negotiations. So there's a level of volatility built into this where people who may have money to invest have no idea what to do with that money because they have no idea what Donald Trump's going to do tomorrow. Like, it's so out of the blue and it's so random in accordance to just the way Donald Trump is. And so I don't get the sense that in 4 years, where you may have a different president, why would they take the expense of moving to the US when you may have different rules, different regulations in 4 years? Like, it makes no sense. And I just to piggyback your point, we love this idea first. Companies could say, okay, I'm going to fire this American worker. I'm going to send him to Mexico. That guy's going to make $2 an hour. But I fired the American worker who's making $15 an hour. Oh my God, look at the amount of profits that I can get. And they did the same thing in China. They did the same thing in Cambodia, Vietnam, wherever else you want to think about it. Those companies were able to make ungodly sums of money and give that money to politicians in order to say, hey, cut any kind of regulation on this product coming in. So not only am I making a ton of money because I just fired Bob and I hired Paco, but now we're also able to bring that stuff back into the country without necessarily having any barriers in doing so. And companies thought it was fantastic. Politicians who was getting paid by those companies thought it was also fantastic. Everybody loved it. Globalization. And so now you have Trump saying this is not in their best interest. And one more thing, the argument that, oh, Americans are going to love this in a few years. Okay, dude, you're going to be out of office in a few years. You may be dead in a few years. And more to the point, it's not like they're increasing wages. Like, meaning we're paying more for things, but it's not like the wages of people are going up. What is the thing that would allow wages to go up? Nothing. He's not for an increased minimum wage. It's just outrageous.
Well, the other thing I think, and we've got, there's so many angles that you could attack this conversation from. Here's one. Donald Trump ran for office, and in his campaign, he said a number of things. Judge me by the wars I don't start. I'm going to be the key peace candidate. We talked about that time and time again, right? And he comes in, and 8 weeks in, he's bombing Yemen, and he's threatening Iran. And Hegseth is talking about, no, it's China we really have to have a war with, and I'll do this to Russia, and he sounds very similar to the Biden administration. He sounds just like the warmongers before. So, okay. Also, he runs for office, and if you listen to his rhetoric, what did he say when he's running? Yeah, people can't afford to live. And meanwhile, Kamala Harris, you know, the Democrats' position was clear. Hey, no, the economy is just wonderful. All you have to do is go to our website. We've got www. You know, whatever, theeconomysgreat.com. We got pie charts there. We got all kinds of graphs that'll let you know. Ignore your bank account. We've got, you know, documentation here that will show you just how wonderful the economy is, and people did buy it, right? And what did Trump say? Yeah, I understand you're struggling. You know, the Democrats don't get it. He said clearly, I'm going to bring the prices down. Okay. So far, when it comes to the business about judging him by war, he gets an F, right? I'm not going to start any wars. Judge me by that. Have you started any wars? Yeah. Okay. Well, then that means you get an F. You set the standard. Next, hey, I'm going to bring prices down. Now, what is he saying now? Now, prices are going to go up in the short run. But based on my calculations, I mean, he left this part out, but this is what he really ought to say. But based on my calculations and my understanding of economics, things are going to turn around at some point. Really when? So what you're telling us is you said you weren't going to start wars and you were going to bring the prices down. Now what you're saying is I will start wars and the prices are going to go up. I mean, in a nutshell, it is. Remember when Joe Biden said, hey, guys, free college, that's the great thing for people. And oh, by the way, we need to fix Obamacare with a public option, and we need and on and on and on, right? And as soon as he got in office, none of them. And now that's my point to getting to be, what difference does it make what party you vote for? Whatever they promise, there is no prayer that you'll get it. Not only that, listen to their promises, because when you listen to the promises, you will know what you're going to get. The opposite of whatever they promise you. And now Donald Trump, 8-9 weeks in, is delivering unabashedly, unceremoniously, and unapologetically the exact opposite of what he promised people on the campaign trail.
You know, this puts you in the mind of when Joe Biden said inflation is transient. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
He was like, oh, it's transient. It's transient. Don't worry about it. And then like 2 years later, they're like, all right, it may be here to stay for a while. It's like, dude, like, how are you telling people that this stuff is transient? And then you find out that, no, things that we have done, policies that we've taken, or Jen Psaki's, how did she say it? Our values are not without cost. And this was after it passed all of these sanctions on Russia and the oil price went up, in which case all of us had to pay more for pretty much everything else. And our values are not without cost. And then when they realized, oh, that sounds bad because it means that we've made a mistake in regards to our policy. Putin price hike. That's what it is. It's a Putin price hike. He is doing the opposite of what he effectively said he was going to do. So I'm not going to start new wars. You have him bombing Yemen and him threatening Iran with effectively the end of the U.S. economy or the world economy, right? And on this, again, he didn't campaign on this. Now, for me, I thought Trump was a flagrant liar from the beginning. So I really had no expectations or trust in anything Trump said, because from my point of view, the man tried to overthrow the government. It's like he wouldn't even accept the election results. So why would I trust him on anything else at that point? For me, it was kind of like, okay, well, he's a non-starter one way or the other. The one thing that I hoped was that he would end the war, because he seemed earnest on that. I mean, that seemed to be something he kept hitting over and over and over and over again. I'm going to end the war. I'm going to end the war. I'm going to end the war. The man looked Muslims in the eye, shook their hands, and said, I'm going to end the war in Gaza. And they believed him. And they were jumping around on stage saying, Trump is a man of peace. Do you remember that? In Michigan, Trump is a man of peace. And I was like, I don't know why y'all believe that. He got all of this money from Israel, like $100 million from Miriam Adelson. But okay, fair enough. They believe it. And he gets in office and he gets a ceasefire right off the bat. But then you find out, as I thought, Trump is amoral to the truth. He says whatever he has to say to get from point A to point B. Truth doesn't matter to him. And so he initially uses that ceasefire as a way to allow Israel to rest, rearm, fill itself with more weapons, and then go into killing spree once again. While it continuously violates a ceasefire, as Hamas is saying, we accept the ceasefire. We will leave, like meaning we will take a back seat in regards to the government if you implement the second phase of the ceasefire. This is as Israel continuously violates the ceasefire. And now there's an ultimatum to Lebanon where they're like, hey, you all are going to die if you don't disarm Hamas. Now, you can imagine any military disarmament is a non-starter. Meaning if you start at that premise, you're not going to get anywhere. Same thing with Iran, or same thing with North Korea, where they were like, we require you to disarm your nuclear weapons. This was the same thing that they told Gaddafi. We need you to not get nuclear weapons. Gaddafi said, okay, in which case he got sodomized with a machete. Fast forward to North Korea. North Korea said, go F off. We're not doing that. And this is our guarantee of security. And they're effectively doing the same thing to Iran right now, where they're acting as if Iran is a nuclear weapon. Tulsi Gabbard said Iran is not trying to get a nuclear weapon. There's a fatwa against nuclear weapons. And yet they were like, well, we think you're trying to get a nuclear weapon, and we are going to attack you if you don't just negotiate with us. Okay, well, what is that negotiation? And at one point, the belief was that the negotiation was for the JCPOA was always to be violated in order to come back later and say, we also need you to get rid of your ballistic program, and we need to stop you having support for resistance. Oh, so you just want us to unilaterally disarm as a country. Okay, that's right. A non-starter. And they're using that premise in order to come up with some rationale, just like George Bush did, going after Iraq, didn't have weapons of mass destruction, by the way, saying something similar to Iran, as if they have weapons of mass destruction. Like, he has repudiated everything that he claimed to stand for on the campaign trail. Again, I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't believe any of this nonsense. I didn't vote for Kamala Harris either, because I thought she was also full of it. But for the people who did, there should be a wake-up call.
Well, you know, and I'll say this, when you said, I don't believe anything Trump said, I'm cynical that way about politicians. You know what I mean? So to me, Trump, do I believe a word out of his mouth? No. Do I believe a word out of Kamala Harris's mouth, Chuck Schumer's house, any of them? I'm like, when people say that Trump is a liar, I'm like, oh yeah, well, and in other, great news, in other breaking news, water is, wet and fire is hot. This is like what this is to America. To me, this is what you get. This is, I mean, look at the two parties. I got to bring this up since we're talking about the news. I don't want to get away from let's hit a few other things. Cory Booker. So this schlump, he's standing up there for 25 hours. Oh, he's Mr. Tough Guy. He's standing up to Trump. He's going to stand up to the Republicans. He's taking some moral position. He's got backbone, right? And the Democrats are morally discredited. Because I knew what I was going to see online. He's up there and they're showing Cory Booker. And what do I see online all over the place? You voted for genocide. Yep. You supported genocide. Here's a picture of you with international war criminal Yoav Gallant. Here's where you said that you texted back and forth with whoever, some other Zionist, crazy person, right? And so I looked at that and I realized it's really hopeless for the Democrats. But because of what happened with the genocide, they're so morally discredited that anytime they try to take a moral position of any kind, and I don't mean amoral, I mean a moral position. Yeah. Right. We're going to stand up to Trump because he's the bad guy. We're going to stand up for the little guy. We're going to stand up against this or for this, whatever. We're doing this because it's good. It's the right thing to do. It's moral. At this point, quick story. I had a friend of mine once that said, yeah, he had a friend and a buddy of his, and he says he went to the guy, and they were buddies, and he went to the guy's house, and let's just say he saw the guy mistreating his wife and kids, not hitting him or anything, but you know what I mean, verbally, just in a way that made him cringe, because he had a wife and 4 kids, right? And he loved, man, nobody loved their kids more than this guy, right? And he saw this guy mistreating his family, and he's like, I couldn't be friends with him anymore, because I'm so family. He's a person that family is very important to him. And he saw somebody just acting like a tyrant, mistreating his family. He said, I can't be friends with him anymore. The guy was morally discounted. There's nothing the guy could say to him after that. Because after seeing that, it was like, this is not right. I think that's where the Democrats are. Whereas there's a lot of people like you and I that no matter if the Democrats try to take a position, we're standing up. It like sickens me. It turns my stomach. And I'm like, you bastards, how dare you try to stand up for, I don't care what it is, hey, we're standing up for dogs and that have been abandoned. Even I don't care what it is. I'm like, you hypocritical sons of bitch. How dare you? So no matter, they're so stained, morally stained by the genocide. I don't think there's anywhere that the Democrats can stand up for anything, Cory Booker or any of them, that people aren't just going to look at them and go, oh, you make me sick, you immoral, genocidal sons of bitches.
Yeah,
they're done. They're dead to me. Isn't that what the 20-some-year-olds say? They're dead to me. They're dead to me.
Dead to me. That's, you know, Bernie Sanders had put out that bill to stop funding. I think it was like $8.8 billion in weapon shipments, and pretty much all of them, with the exception of I think maybe 11, voted against it. Cory Booker voted against it, meaning he was voting for those weapons going to Israel. And this is after him grandstanding for 24 hours, 20 minutes, or whatever the amount of time was. By the way, not a filibuster, because there was no legislation that he was blocking or impeding. Cory Booker was just standing up there doing a theatrical performance. Some of the parts were a good performance, but they were a theatrical performance. It didn't mean anything. It didn't matter. He wasn't holding up legislation. He wasn't stopping anything. Nothing was being impeded. There was nothing that he was stopping in regards to Trump doing something. He was just doing a performance. Can I present something on the screen?
Sure. Oh, sure. Yeah. Put it on. I'll make sure.
Okay. So Cory Booker approves of this. This is a school being bombed with all of these kids huddling in the school being executed by Israel. Cory Booker approves that. He's okay with that. He has no issue with that. Cory Booker has no issue with that. Cory Booker approves all of this. Like, meaning all of the chaos that has been taking place in Gaza as they destroy and kill all of these people. Cory Booker gives his approval to it. So as he's standing up there, grandstanding, moralizing about, oh my God, Donald Trump is awful. Donald Trump is getting rid of Social Security. Donald Trump is doing all of this stuff. He is also backing a literal genocide where children are being executed, huddling in a UN school. Like, this is, like, are we serious right now? Like, how is he playing this role where he is standing up for America? He's standing up for American values while all of a sudden also holding the exact same policy on murdering Palestinians as Donald Trump has. Cory Booker is in the tank every bit as much into whatever is happening right now in Gaza as Donald Trump is. Don't give me this nonsense about this moralizing stuff. One more point. Cory Booker in that speech was talking about Trump going after college campuses, and we need to have the ability to have free speech and open dialogue. We got fired from our jobs under that same Joe Biden, under that same Tony Blinken, who decided we don't necessarily want to hear the opinions of these particular people. Nina Jankowicz, who was running the Ministry of Truth, where Joe Biden was effectively crushing, coming up with a censorship regime, no less, to go after points of view that Joe Biden didn't particularly like, to weed those points of view out. So it's like, give me a break. Give me a break. Yes, he's destroying Social Security. Yes, he's destroying Medicare. Yes, he's destroying Medicaid. Yes, he is an ogre and he is grotesque. You are not that much better. You're not that much better.
Have you seen the latest? It seems to me, you know, we were reporting at 27% or 29%. The numbers are just dying for the Democrat. Even as Trump's numbers are starting to drop.
Yeah,
I've never seen anything like it. It's always this party drops, this party goes up. This party drops. It's always between like this. Now it's, you know what I mean? It's the Democrats. What is it? 69% or something like that. Like disapprove and don't like it. There's crazy numbers against the Democrats. They, you know, they won't discuss it. When they talk about their problems, oh, we've got to change. You hear them every now and we've got to change. One of them was like, we've got to get our shit together. I don't know if you saw that. There was like an article, right? Yes. But it's like a person who is an alcoholic. They lose their family, their kids won't talk to them, they lose their job, you know, they lose their license. And if somebody says, you know, you really need to make some changes, and they're willing to do anything but stop drinking. They're willing to talk about any of the, well, you know, I guess I need to exercise more. Perhaps I need to eat organic food. Anything in the world, they won't talk about that quart of whiskey that they drink every day, right? The Democrats, well, all this, we need to get our shit together. What does that mean? What does that rhetorical bullcrap mean? Get our shit together. You have to address the fact that you did and are still supporting a genocide, but that's the one thing, the thing that has discredited your party morally, maybe for all eternity. The only thing that you can't really talk about, well, let me go one further. They can't talk about Ukraine either. The one thing, the biggest thing they're mad at Trump is they're coming with their blue and yellow ties. Oh, you need to give more. When Trump said something about giving billions to Ukraine, yay, woo, billions to Ukraine. So the thing that the Democrats can't say is perhaps our foreign policy is causing us a problem. Because that's the real thing. That's the real thing on Capitol Hill is the neocon imperial foreign policy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the thing that can't be named, right? Like, I don't know how they believe that a moral position is supporting a war. I just don't. And I don't know how they think that a moral position is supporting Israel as it literally massacres. I mean, the images that are coming out are grotesque. Like they're murdering kids, for God's sake, and they're doing so in mass. And it's not about going after Hamas. Hamas at this point has said, we are willing to negotiate. Please just stop. And their thing is, we are now pushing for voluntary deportation. Effectively, we want to take it all. And this is the pretense of this being about Hamas has been wiped away. Donald Trump has their full support, but that's the rub. So did Joe Biden. So does Cory Booker. So does all of these other Democrats that are effectively supporting this money going into the murder of all of these kids and everything else. The party, believe it or not, the mainstay of the Democratic Party, meaning regular people, are against this. The kids who are watching this are against this. And the Democrats have the problem that just so happened that the kids are the ones who are most against this genocide, but also the kids were most likely the ones that would vote Democrats. Like, it's a contradiction in terms. And so they don't stand for anything domestically that I can understand or come up with. And simultaneously, they are atrocious and grotesque on foreign policy sense. Whether you're talking about the war in Ukraine, where they want more Ukrainians to go out and die, or whether they're talking about Israel, where they're perfectly okay with Israel going out and murdering Lebanese, Syrians, Gazans, people in the West Bank, or for that matter, starting a war with Iran. All of these things are grotesque. How do you consider yourself to be the moral party, right, under these terms? And if you are going out and acting like you're the moral party, and everybody knows that you're backing this genocide and that you want to continue the war in Ukraine, how does that look? That looks horrible, right? And so then it becomes, okay, well, what do you have on domestic front? Nothing. I have no idea what Cory Booker stands for in a substance sense. I have no idea what the Democratic Party stands for in a substance sense. I would argue they don't stand for anything. And so when he's like, I find bravery in my crew, do you? Where is it? Where is this bravery to which you're asserting, you're self-asserting that there is in your party, or for that matter, in yourself? Cory Booker is a superhero. He saved people from a burning fire. Congratulations for that. That's a good thing. He's been outside digging out snow for people. Again, congratulations for that. That has nothing to do with your politics.
Right.
Wholeheartedly.
It's unbelievable what we're watching. Now, let me say add this too. One of the things I find interesting is that, a lot of people have this discussion about Starmer and Macron. Starmer and Macron are madmen. They're crazy. They want to take their troops and go, they got like 20,000 troops combined, and they're going to go up against hundreds of thousands of Russians on the Russian border. And they really don't have much, they like have no tanks hardly left or anything left. That's all been gone to Ukraine and been blown up long ago. Right. So they got really nothing, but they're pretending like they can go fight a war, but they can't. And even like their military people, like, we can't do that. The Poland military recently came out. The Polish and said, yeah, we got 2 weeks. That's about all we could go, about 2 weeks worth of fighting. And I don't think they need it, because I think they'd all get blown to hell on day one. They wouldn't need 2 weeks because they wouldn't live long enough to get to use the reserve ammunition that they have. Okay, here's my point. So what people say is, what we hear a lot is, they're mad. The Europeans are mad. They're going to go fight Russia on their border. This is insanity, right? What's wrong with these people? They're delusional. We are trapped, mired in this Ukraine conflict, pouring money and weapons and stuff into there, putting all this energy in trying to get a ceasefire that ain't never going to happen.
Right.
We're mired in unthinkable wars in the Middle East, bombing everybody, using, Israel's a cat's paw, in my opinion. They're just, a proxy war. Israel's the proxy over here. So we're losing a naval battle to the doggone Houthis. How do you do that? I don't know, but we're losing a naval battle to the Houthis. All of that. Now, what does Hegseth say? It's China. Those are the ones we need to take on. And I'm thinking, they got the biggest navy in the world, and you can't beat the Houthis, and they don't even have a navy.
Yeah.
They have a navy. You can't beat you can't beat a country with no navy, and you want to go up against on the border of a country, 7,000 miles from here. Let's give them 1,000, 6,000 miles from here, and you got to get all your stuff there. What are you going to? You got this other stuff going on. Is it more delusional for Starmer to have a half a dozen Brits and to say he's going to go fight the Red Army with them? What's more delusional? Or Hegseth saying we're tied down, we're running out of stuff, we got hardly nothing to fight with. One other thing I got to add to this: the guy who's running for they're trying to confirm as the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff just said the other day, he said, "Look, we don't have the industrial infrastructure to maintain a war with China. If we got in a war with China, we couldn't keep it going." Right? I was reading something the other day. China's reserve force of men, if they need to bring up reserves, 25 million. 25 million. They got this. But did I mention we're on China's border 7,000 miles away, and they'll be firing unthinkably thousands of missiles per hour at every one of our bases, which will last about an hour, right? My point being, it's no more delusional for Keir Starmer to take a band, as I always say, a band of soccer hooligans, which is all he has, to challenge the Red Army, than it is for Hegseth in all of the deteriorated industrial, economic, and military state that we're in, to say, well, yeah, okay, let's go fight the Chinese now. The level of delusion is no different to me.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have the industrial base like we did in the 1940s. Like, if we're thinking of the Second World War, we had such industrial might where we could send two forces, like to literally raise and build ships, bullets, planes, all of this stuff, fund to militaries, while also giving jeeps, spam, and everything else to the Red Army to keep them going, and go after Germany and go after Japan on two sides of the globe. Like, it is hard to get across the power of the American industrial base back in the 1940s. That is not where we are today. We've deindustrialized ourselves with the idea of profit. What is that? Capitalists will say the rope that's used to hang them. And the same thing is true for a capitalist nation, where we would just deindustrialize. Okay, well, Russia didn't do that. Like, Russia kept a lot of their forces in reserve, meaning kept those factories. Even if they weren't using those factories, they kept those factories. And so when the war happened, they was like, all right, ramp up the production. They understood that they were always under threat. They understood that Europe and the US was not to be trusted, especially when Putin got in office. And you had a consistent foreign policy, a consistent economic policy, et cetera. I'm saying the same thing is true for China. When Xi Jinping gets in, you have a consistent economic military plan where they understood that they were under threat. And in their mind, after the gunboat diplomacy that forced the Opium Wars, they were like, never again. Those, what do they call it? The year of humiliation. Never again. This will never again happen to us. So you have a country with an overwhelming economic and industrial base with 1.3 billion people in that country. And we can't keep up with them in the sense of industry. And so it's like the roles have reversed. And it's supposed to the United States kind of looking at themselves. How would we ever really attack them? I mean, we can go to nuclear war, but nobody really wins a nuclear war. And so what do we really expect to do? Are we going to sail aircraft carriers over and have them blown out of the water with hypersonic missiles? What are we going to do? How do we expect to attack this country in this way? And, you know, in China, to make a point about it, surrounded Taiwan. You had various separatists in Taiwan that seemingly want to be Ukraine. I don't know why they want to be Ukraine, but apparently Taiwan wants to be the new Ukraine, or elements of Taiwan wants to be the new Ukraine. And they maybe listen to this nonsense the Hegseth is saying about this pivot and supporting Taiwan. Taiwan is part of China. That is a red line. And, you know, I remember I was talking to KJ and I was like, KJ was like, China doesn't want a war. China doesn't want this stuff. And I was like, but Taiwan is a red line, right? Yes. He's super clear on that. Taiwan is a red line. Taiwan is part of China. And some of the stuff is kind of like it is in the United States. If you talk about race in the US, we get it as people, whether you're white, black, we flesh the bone, understand the dynamics and the politics of race in the United States. It is almost like air for us. We understand it in the way that we understand breathing. A foreigner doesn't. They don't get it.
Right.
Don't fully see it. I remember India used to be like, I don't know why you guys act this way. Well, you weren't born here.
Yeah.
Right? You had a different context.
Oh, let me say this. A buddy of mine came from Puerto Rico, and in Puerto Rico, and he said, well, in Puerto Rico, he said he went to his family reunion, you know, or family picnic. He says, with Puerto Ricans, he said there'd be people there as white as snow and people there as black as coal, all members of the family, you know, in Puerto Rico, because Puerto Ricans go from all the way, what do they call them, Afro, Latino, whatever, all the way to people who are mostly Spaniard blood who are white. So he said, when he moved to New Jersey from here, he didn't understand it. Because he didn't have a concept. To him, black or white or something was like here, a person they're tall and one person's short. One person has red hair and the other person has brown hair. That's the way it was in his understanding of race, was just like, yeah, you know, this is my cousin Joe and this is my cousin Bill and, you know, whatever, right? Pedro, whatever, you know. And so, like you said, he didn't get it when he was in a place where they had people of multicolors, but it didn't have the same context as here. I'm just saying that. Yeah. So
by the way, my ex-girlfriend, same thing, where she came to visit, and she's like, so wait, is that guy white? And I was like, no, that guy's black. But that guy looks white. That guy's black. Okay, well, what about that guy? So like in her mind, she was like, I don't understand how you guys are appropriating who's black and who's white. Because some of these people look very light-skinned, and some of these people look very dark skinned, and yet you're saying both of these people are effectively black. Yes, that's the way it is. She said, but if many of the people were mixed, you know, from slavery and everything else, why aren't they considered mixed? It's like, dude, it doesn't work that way. Like, we get it, right? It's the same thing is true for China. Like, they suffered through this humiliation of Hong Kong being ripped away, of Taiwan being, you know, calling themselves China at the point where the Republic of China, effectively, there was the breakaway after the Second World War. They get it, and it is not something they're willing to accept for historical reasons, in the same way that we're not necessarily willing to accept people being bluntly racist in America. Like, we are ignoring historical context in the way that we are dealing with China in a way that will provoke, I would suspect, intentionally, a conflict. But it's a conflict that we can't win. It is impossible to win it. It's just like all of the military exercises that we have come up with, like the drills and everything else, we've lost those war games exercises. And as the person pointed out, we cannot keep up in a military campaign against China and industrial. We think Russia is pumping out weapons and bullets and guns and tanks. China, a country of 1.3 billion people with an industrial capacity, just ungodly. It is fool's errand.
Right, I always bring it up. I was watching this thing where they had one missile factory, and trust me, they got more than one that can make 1,000 missiles a day.
Yeah,
they probably literally, there's no question in my mind, they have millions of surface to surface, millions. They probably have all of our bases. You know, there was a time when the U.S. could be like, we've got 200 bases surrounding China, so they better be wary. And now they're like, yep, everybody got all 200 bases targeted. Those bases are going to be mincemeat. Day one, if you get in a war with them, they can put literally 1,000 missiles an hour on every, you know, they got millions of missiles. They can say, we're going to put 1,000 missiles an hour on every single base for about a day.
Yeah.
And we'll see. And we'll recalibrate. If there's anything left, we'll give them another day. You're not going to survive the kinds of things that they can do now. It is, like you said, it is unthinkable. And it's you know, you just look at it and you see the kind of things that's being said by the leaders of our country, and you shake your head at the level of delusion. There was another thing I wanted to touch base on, and that
Real quick,
was
you
go
said
ahead, go ahead.
something.
Go ahead,
Empire
go
in
ahead.
decline. Empire in decline. Empire in decline. It's getting irrational. It's just getting completely irrational.
Economically, militarily, all of it is
Yeah,
irrational, delusional.
yeah.
Good.
It's delusional. No, I was just agreeing with you. It's delusional. It's like it's not looking at this stuff with an objective lens. It's looking at it through this lens of how do we maintain the empire? And it seems to get more and more desperate in the way that they're thinking about it. And by the way, both parties, the fact that, you know, whether it's one party going after Russia or the other party going after China, both of those things are the same. They're the same.
Let me ask you this. There was another story, and I know you covered it, and I covered it a bit, and that was the whole thing about this, that now that there's books coming out and people are starting to sing about what happened with the Democrats prior to the election, how Clyburn called Biden,
Yeah.
Obama didn't want Harris. I know you covered it pretty well. Fill people in on that story for those who don't know about it, and we can touch on that.
Oh, that story is fantastic. Oh, that story is fantastic. The same guy who wrote about this, I forget the other book that he wrote that I read that was actually really good. But he points out, now, if you remember, Clyburn was the one that pushed Joe Biden to get a black woman for VP anyway. And it ended up being Kamala Harris. What is her name? Stacey Abrams is the one who wanted the spot. She was lobbying openly for it, but it ended up being Kamala Harris.
She got embarrassed. Remember, she got embarrassed real bad. Do you remember that?
Yes,
she got humiliated.
Yes, she did. And so, come to find out, behind the scenes, we knew that there was something going on behind the scenes because Obama was doing this whisper campaign against Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And you know, I think it was Obama who said, "Never underestimate the opportunity for Joe Biden to F stuff up."
Yeah.
So it was clear Obama did not want Joe Biden to run for office. Whatever, Joe Biden ran for office, he eventually won. When it came down to it, and after he got eaten alive in the media after that debate performance, that catastrophic, infamous debate performance that would go down as the worst debate performance in presidential history. It was like, we beat Medicare. You sure did beat the hell out of Medicare.
Yeah.
Like, there are so many great one-liners in it, right? So when Joe Biden was on his way out, Joe Biden was going to give the speech. Clyburn apparently read it first before Joe Biden gave the speech. And Clyburn was like, you didn't mention Kamala Harris. What do you mean? You didn't mention Kamala Harris. You're effectively stepping down and leaving a void and didn't mention Kamala Harris. Now, what Clyburn knew was that Obama wanted to have a brokered convention. So did Nancy Pelosi. Meaning Obama was trying to get Joe Biden out the race so they could have a fight at the convention to figure out who's the best person to take over.
He like Mark, what's his name? He liked the astronaut guy from Arizona, I think. I forgot his name.
Mark Kelly.
I heard that's who he was tight with, who he wanted. But as you're saying, several different factions had their person and they wanted to fight it out.
Exactly. They were like, okay, who's the best Democrat? Let's fight it out at the convention hall. We'll do it that way. Clyburn pushed Joe Biden, knowing that he was going to have a conversation with Obama, avoided that conversation with Obama, and talked to Joe Biden and tried to get Joe Biden to say, look, you need to put Kamala Harris' name in the hat. You need to say her name. You need to say that she's going to be the one to take over. Knowing full well that that is not what Obama, Pelosi, and some of the other Democrats behind the scenes wanted, because they believed that she was a weaker candidate. And if you remember, for the longest time, it was almost taken as a given that Kamala Harris was a weaker candidate. Her numbers were always weaker, even than Joe Biden's. And so when Clyburn is pushing and pushing, Joe Biden comes out and finally puts Kamala Harris' name in the speech. And so shafting what Obama wants. And so at the point where Joe Biden is going to give the speech, Clyburn goes to Obama and says, hey, he's putting in Kamala Harris. Fait accompli. in which case they have a 1 minute conversation, because at that point, the jig was already up. There was no way Obama could come out for an open convention at the point where the president of the United States has just name dropped Kamala Harris as his successor. They were stuck with her. Clyburn, Negro Whisperer, found a way to not just get Kamala Harris in as VP, but to wedge her in as the candidate for president, shafting what Obama wanted. Obama never wanted Kamala Harris. Amazing.
Well, you know, you see the internal things going on again, and this is what I keep saying about the issue about the Democratic Party, because I get my callers on a radio show, and what do we need to do? What's the answer, Bob? What could the Democrats do? I said, well, one thing the Democrats could do, but they can't possibly do, and that is have an open and honest primary and allow the voters to choose. But they ain't going to do that, because the voters would surely choose somebody they don't like. In this instance, if you think about it, there was even Obama liking Mark Kelly, or maybe the people, I would imagine Pelosi probably wanted Gavin Newsom. You know, they all had their own person, right? But one thing for sure, none of those various factions were saying, we only have a chance if the people choose. No. In fact, let's not forget Obama. He don't have nothing to say. He's the same man. It was rumored and he never denied it during 2020 that he said, well, if it looks like that Bernie's going to win, I won't hesitate to step in, right? So here's a guy who said in the past, look, we can't let the people choose. We can't have them exercise democracy in this party. I got my faction, you got your faction. If the stupid old voters out there choose somebody, we'll step in and get it done, which is exactly what he did, right? Mm-hmm. So the point is, a party who now, look, let's face it, in the past, they probably, in all likelihood, they did it in a more underhanded way. But now they're flat out open. Look, remember the response to the lawsuit where they said we could literally go into a smoke-filled back room and choose them? Now they're like, look, it is what it is. The people don't have a choice. We choose, you accept. Well, now you're half right. We choose, but the voters have said we don't accept. So on top of all of the problems, the policy problems that they have, and I had one thing, and then they run around the world and say we stand for democracy.
Yeah.
After that, they have a summit for democracy, and certain countries come and certain countries can't come because, we have democracy. Again, don't we get back to J.D. Vance's speech? Don't we get back to people right now saying to France, Romania, and on and on? Let's not forget what happened to Jeremy Corbyn. That was a precursor to all of this stuff, right? That was the state. This is not new in the European Union. And the United States was in favor of that. Mike Pompeo back then said, look, if it looks like Corbyn will win, he said, we won't wait to act. Pompeo said that. So the U.S. has been involved in this kind of electoral chicanery worldwide, probably here, that's the Bush 2000, on and on and on. But they've been a part of that. And now they're like, well, yeah, but they did it to a couple people we like, so we don't like, they shouldn't do it there. But right here in the United States, I don't know if you remember, Ron Paul a few years ago in Iowa beat Mitt Romney.
Yep.
And they came out and they said Romney won. And then like a year later, they're like, yeah, okay, actually Ron Paul won. We lied. So the Republicans and the Democrats both have a history of electoral chicanery. Neither one of them have any, to be quite frank, 2020, 2016, 2024, whatever the case, both of them had screwed and cheated their own voters. None of them really have a gripe with the other guy cheating, because they reserve the right to cheat their own voters. They reserve the right to cheat the voters in Europe. It's just that if there's somebody they don't like, they don't want it. So this illusion, I call it's the illusion of democracy. But the Democrats, they ain't even at least put up the illusion. They're past that.
2 points. The Ron Paul thing is fascinating. I was talking to my mom about Ron Paul today because I had on Dane McAdams. Mm-hmm. And, Ron Paul would be like in second place. In some cases, he would win. And the media would act like he wasn't on the ballot. It was the weirdest thing ever. Like they would show the names and they would act like Ron Paul wasn't in second spot, or Ron Paul didn't win, or Ron Paul wasn't in third spot. They would act as if he was just invisible. And it's like, dude is popular. And he's popular because he's principled. Whether you agree with him on a domestic front or not, when he's talking about international politics, Ron Paul was typically right. And Deborah Wasserman-Schultz came out and said the quiet part out loud. I don't know if you remember this. She was like, the entire point of superdelegates is to keep activists from running in our elections. Basically, we don't want the popular person to actually win. We want somebody who's a party insider to effectively win, and we want party insiders to decide who that person is. So when Sanders is running against Clinton, they cheat him. And that's when you get to the lawsuit, was that we could choose a person in a smoke-filled room. By the way, he's right. Political parties are just corporations. They aren't, there's nothing magical about it. These are corporations that are running almost like who drives the bus. And in case you have one party that says, well, I want to drive the bus, the other party, I want to drive the bus. And they come into an election, in a general election, and make a decision on who effectively runs the country. But in the primary process, open bag. You don't even need to have a primary. The Democratic Party can say, we're just not going to have primaries. We're just going to choose random person here. In which case they did 1 year. And of course, it destroyed their opportunity to win because the American public is like, okay, you just chose that guy. That's not somebody we actually care about. In case you have the fig leaf, the patina of democracy in regard to a primary process. In the Republican side, and I think people need to realize this, 2016 was a watershed moment. You had the center that effectively failed completely, with the public looking for something dramatically different. On the right, you had somebody like Donald Trump, who ended up gutting, skinning, and wearing the hide of 19 other Republicans as he went to win the primary. They didn't have superdelegates in the Republican Party. If they did, they would have kept Trump out.
Yes,
in the Democratic side, you had Sanders, which was the same type of energy, but coming on the left of something radically different than what they had in regards to the center, with Hillary Clinton being the standard bearer, the one holding the chainsaw at the door, saying, you're not coming through, Bernie. The socialist is not coming through. It is shocking, however, for a socialist to even get that close in such a capitalist country as the United States. The Democrats didn't take that message. And instead, they ran the most establishment candidate against Donald Trump at a time where the country was looking for something fundamentally different. They didn't care. They preferred to lose as opposed to win with somebody like Sanders. I've had conversations with liberals who I would point out, look, Sanders most likely would have been the one that would beat Trump. Oh, I don't like him. Okay, well, then you lose. Then you accept
then
the
you
law.
get Trump. Yeah, then you get Trump.
Then you get Trump. But that seems to be acceptable for them. Meaning they want to win in a context to which they can't win. You're running, it's almost like we want to win with a liberal. It's like, okay, well, what if you can't win with a liberal because you guys are trash? Then we lose, which is what has been happening. They keep putting up these milquetoast worth nothing politicians that have no substance, that don't offer anything, and they get crushed. And then they get shocked about how they got crushed. And yeah, you get Kamala Harris out here recently saying, I told you so. It's like, shut up. Why are you here? Why are you still here? I thought you were out drinking or something with your husband, who's a wife beater, or, at the very least, a girlfriend beater. My point is that they did anything and everything in their power to prevent a natural process that should have taken place, where organically the American public chose who they wanted, even if it wasn't somebody that was within the orthodoxy of the political party, in a way that the Republican Party didn't stop, in which case they ended up with Trump, somebody who broke orthodoxy at the very least in his stated objectives and the way that he operated, either on tariffs or in this notion of trying to end the war with Russia. One last point, you're right on Europe. Jeremy Corbyn got eaten alive by his own party and his own weakness. He was weak. I love the guy. Weak. There is something about these lefties who tend to be too moral to do the job, if that makes sense.
Well, I'll put it a little different way. I've always said they want to run a second base and keep one foot on first. They want to challenge the system and punch back at the system, but they don't want to offend the system too much while they do it. You know what I mean? You got to punch the system in the gut. You got to kick the system in the groin, poke the system in the eyes. If you're going to fight the system, there ain't no way to remain as a, a stalwart of the system and a friend of the system and still have the system accept you, but beat the system, because the system is rotten to the core and it's going to try to cut your throat. And if you're not willing to get down in the dirt and to fight a knife fight with the system, I'm sorry. And Corbyn and Sanders too, both of them are the same type that, yes, I'm going to be anti-system and fight the system, but I don't want to offend the system too much while they do it. Well, you're going to lose because the system is nasty.
Yeah, Keir Starmer put a knife in Jeremy Corbyn's sternum over and over and over again. And Jeremy Corbyn, I give you like Brexit is a really good example. Jeremy Corbyn, when he got in, he had numbers that were astonishing. Like, he brought so many people into the political process. It was like rivaling Tony Blair or something like that.
It was like Bernie's movement. It really was like Bernie's movement. It was the same thing.
It really was. But Corbyn was a true believer. Yes. Even beyond where Sanders was. Because the British political system allowed you go further. When Brexit came up, Jeremy Corbyn was a Brexiteer before the Brexit thing was even an issue. And yet, when the issue came up, Starmer and many of the other people in his party were like, you can't be okay with Brexit. This is despite the fact that the public had a referendum saying, we want to leave. Now, whether you think it was good or bad, the public voted, we want to leave. If you have any notion of democracy, you're stuck with the fact that the referendum said you want to leave. Boris Johnson came out and said, I believe in freedom and democracy, and took the lane of freedom and democracy. Now, this is an astonishing lane for Boris Johnson to take, but that's the lane that he took. And he could take that lane because it was effectively abdicated by Labour Party when Jeremy Corbyn was like, I don't have an opinion on the issue. How do you not have an opinion on the biggest issue in going back for like 50, 60 years in British history? And yet he wouldn't take a position on the issue. And he started fighting on the NHS, which, I'm sorry, didn't matter in the context of what they were having a conversation about. Jeremy Corbyn got stumped, not just stumped. They lost districts that they never lost, meaning you've had Labour districts that have been part of Labour for like 70 years that they lost because of the way that his party effectively got him into a shape, as opposed to Corbyn telling his party to F off and say, yeah, we're back in the referendum. That's what we're going to do. I mean, the public voted. That's what we decided to do. And we're going to bring up the NHS. Because at the very least, you inoculate this nonsense argument that Boris Johnson is running with, that he believes in freedom and democracy and all this other nonsense. And you could still fight on this issue of they're going to privatize the NHS if they get in power. Right now, there is no difference between the Labour Party and the Conservative Party with Keir Starmer that is radically disliked. I mean, you're so right. It's frustrating. And I saw somebody saying they're going to leave Earth. It feels that way, right? Like, it feels like you're in a madhouse and these people are lunatics.
Well, you know what's interesting about that, and we'll finish up here. You know, as we talk about the deterioration, the economic deterioration, just the degeneration of the West, Russia and China, their economies are growing. They're literally, I think Russia was 4% or something the last couple of years. It's like the best thing that we ever did was sanction Russia, because their economy, it's like they got loose from this corpse of a economic system, and they're doing well. The Chinese, they've been, doing their thing. They got their planned economy. They set it up how they want it. Every 6 months, remember they had that issue with housing and real estate, and everybody said, that's it, they're done. And the Chinese are like, no, because we control the banks. And they're like, all right, we're going to do this with the banks. We're going to set this. We're going to move this. This is going to happen. Okay. And on they go, right? Because the government literally controls the means of production. They control the interest rates. They control the banks. And if things look hairy, they'll shut the stock market down. The government will just say, yeah, that doesn't look good, does it? Yeah, shut the stock market down. And they'll do whatever needs to do because they got their fingers like right on the economic levers in the most minute way. And over here, it's like, well, that's not freedom. Well, I'll tell you one thing it is, they can make on the fly minute adjustments so that they don't suffer. Look, everybody, we had lockdowns here. They had bigger lockdowns than we did. But what did they do? They're lockdowns. We're like, hey, everybody, you're locked down yet, and you're poor. You ain't working, no money. We'll give you $1,200 once a year. What did they do? People kept paying. The businesses didn't have to pay because the bank that pays the government. So now you got a business. The government says, you don't have to pay rent. You don't have to pay nothing until we tell you things are opening back up. They had the ability to control their economy in a way that ensures that they don't run into that kind of pain that we don't have. And now, even what we're doing even now is hope. It's, look, we're going to do tariffs, and then we'll do giant tax cuts for the rich and the corporations, because that's always worked so well. And then money will be in the hands of the corporations and the investor class. And then what? Well, we hope that they'll build factories and bring people back. That's all it is hope. Well, they'll do this. How do you know? In China, they know, because if they say there's going to be factories built, the government's in charge of building them, or the corporations that get money from the government will say, you have to build X amount of factories with the money we're giving you, and you have no choice. You have to do it. They have control. Now, let's just say for a second that Trump's stuff works, and Trump says, hey, guess what? We got all this money coming in, and companies want to come back, or companies have all this extra money, and we want them to build. You know what those companies will say? Man, we got an extra $500 million. What do you think we ought to do? I got an idea. Let's buy our own stock, artificially inflate the price, the value of our stock, and then the people with the board of directors, the president, double his salary. The dividends will go up for the rich people that own the stock. You know what I mean? No matter what, we're in a situation where you have to hope that the investor class, when they get that money, are going to do what you would like them to do with it, knowing that they will never do that. But so here we sit when we talk about the rot economic and rot in Europe and here, and we know it doesn't have to be that way, because we're watching countries at the exact same time able to expand economically and grow their economies.
So true. I mean, China has, that's the thing with coherent leadership. I mean, we go back and forth, we teeter-totter between administrations. And so you would get Joe Biden's Build Back Better plan that effectively didn't build anything for all intents and purposes. I mean, if you're talking about it like the electrical thing, or they were talking about electrical stations for EVs, for cars, electronic vehicles, or they were even talking about.
I think they're burning those. I think they're burning those now because they're pissed at. They're pissed at Musk. People are literally burning those stations now because they're pissed at Musk.
Oh, Teslas.
Yeah, they're literally burning EV stations now because they're.
Yeah, he's radioactive. I mean, but they didn't even build any. And even for the notion of internet, like,
didn't they build like 6 or something? Did you ever see that? There was a story where they had like, I forgot, hundreds of millions of dollars, and they built like 6 charging stations.
I didn't even think they built that many. And even for the high-speed internet, like your major political achievement came for naught. And then Trump comes in, and of course Trump's going to put a bullet in it. And just like Joe Biden put a bullet in whatever Trump was doing this time around, it's so incoherent. And you have a communist government, Russia's a capitalist government, but you have leadership at the helm of that where it is coherent and consistent. Meaning whatever their weaknesses and whatever the flaws, because all governments have flaws and all governments have weaknesses and unrest and everything else, it is coherent and it's competent. And I think it's the competence that is missing. Like, the people in the US seem ravenous. Like, they seem, like, for example, the Republican Party is not even thinking what is in the best interest of America. They're thinking, how can we give ourselves more tax cuts? How can we cut
win in the next win? How can we win in the next election? You know what I mean? That's the other thing. It's like, how do we win when right now the Democrats are not like, hey, what do we do to help the American people? No, the Democrats are like, how do we get more seats in the midterms? That's all they care about, because that's how they build their pockets. The more power that they have in Congress, the more money that the corporations and the donors give them.
I think you call it a cultish fundraising mechanism, not a political masquerading as a political party. And I guess you could say that about both. Like, do we honestly believe, does the American public honestly believe that these people who are in office are representing our interests, meaning are doing this stuff for the best interests of America. It's not like we are doing this for the health and well-being of American citizens. I don't think, you might get 4% that are deluded that believes that. I don't believe that. I don't buy that premise. They are making a ton of money in order to get in office, in order to give back to people who effectively got them in office. Okay, but that is not us. That's not you and me. That is not the regular American public. Even what Trump is doing right now with the tariffs, they're going to take whatever they get from the tariffs, the $800 billion or whatever, and they're going to use it as a justification to give larger tax cuts to the top 1% and to the rich. It's not coming to us. We're going to be paying for it. I mean, like they are literally destroying Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, organizations and institutions that are for the weakest and the poorest of this country. They don't care. They have no compunction about it at all, and yet they still do it. Whereas in China, the people, to the tune of 80 to 90%, actually believe that their government is working in their best interests. Same thing in Russia, where Putin gets like an 80% approval rating because they believe that he's working in Russia's best interests. There is a radical difference in the way that we operate. Now, again, I'm not saying that those governments are perfect. I'm not saying that I will want to live in either one. I am pointing out, though, that the public who does live in those countries believe that the country is working for their best interests. In Russia's case, preventing an existential or winning an existential war, and is pushing back on the way that America and Europe is effectively going after the country, where they realize, oh, right, Putin has a point. This is too far. Even people who, by the way, disagree with Putin agree with the special military operation, with the idea that this is an issue, you guys are on our border, this is intolerable. Same thing with China, where the majority of Chinese are like, our living standards have increased. They've raised, what, like 800,000 or 800 million people out of poverty, some insane number. This government is competent. They can see things being built. They can see high-speed rail being built. They can see people going to the moon. Meaning you have a government that can actually do stuff and get stuff done in a way where in the US, that no longer seems to be true. We seem to be a basket case of a country. I mean, for God's sake, they elected Donald Trump. And even before they elected Donald Trump, they elected Joe Biden, who was out of his mind, who was cognitively challenged, and yet they still put him in office. I'm serious. It was like Weekend at Bernie's. But that is, it bespeaks of an empire in decline, that these are the figures that are rising into prominence and the power, with us seeming to be trapped in a political system with no capability of getting out of it. And even when you get this kind of democratic option of, let's say, like a Sanders, that tries to shake it up, they put a knife in him. Or in the UK, Jeremy Corbyn, they put a knife in him. Colin Kaepernick, they put a knife in him. Le Pen, they put a knife in him. And again, it's not like these are great figures. It's more so that they were democratic options that the public wanted, that the orthodoxy said, hell no, we're not accepting that. That's amazing. So it's madhouse.
The thing about the last election is not that Donald Trump won, to me. It's that the Democrats put up somebody so bad, because I've always said, I think you should have, look, Putin has what? A PhD in economics and a law degree. I forgot what he is, some kind of a scientist or engineer or something, right? These are highly educated people. We put up Trump, and Trump won in a blowout over Kamala Harris. Look at the kind of people. The Democrats put up somebody so bad that Donald Trump looked like FDR beside her. He'd blow her out. How bad do you have to be to get blown out by Donald Trump? He's not a great option by any. I understand why people voted for him. I didn't, let's just say, but I understand people that looked at Kamala Harris and they were desperate, and they went, oh my God, we can't let her in office under any circumstances. I don't like either one of them, but I understand how people, but the fact that that's who you ran says you got a country in very, very serious trouble. Jamarl Thomas, everybody don't forget, we run this when we're together. We always run these on both of our platforms. So go to Jamarl Thomas's website, and go to his YouTube page. If you are not a subscriber over at his channel, make sure you subscribe to his. If you're not a subscriber at my channel, make sure you come over and subscribe to mine. We gotta blend them together. You know what I mean? Kind of like if you take a salt shaker and a pepper shaker and you pour one on top. After a while, you shake them and you got nothing but gray. That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make our channels blend in so we all have as many subscribers as possible. You can Patreon, buy me a coffee, or PayPal. I think I got my CashApp stuff there. Those are some of the ways you can contribute. How can they contribute to your channel, Jamarl?
Same way at Patreon, CashApp, Super Chat, stickers, all of those things are appreciated. Definitely check me out Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Not to mention I pop in every random blue moon for other stories. But no, same thing. Patreon, Super Chat, Super Stickers, all those things are immensely appreciated.
All right. The most important thing is whether you can afford. It's great if you can afford to contribute, but whether you can afford to contribute or not, the important thing you can do is if you're on X, if you're on Telegram, Facebook, whatever, make sure you share these on all your social media platforms, because don't forget, this is alternative media, right? We don't have MSNBC, CNN. We don't have advertisements, none of that. Everything that happens is word of mouth. And sometimes you share something. And I've had people say, oh, well, I saw you on this, on somebody else's program, and that's why I started following you, or I like your stuff, or whatever. Somebody shared this on whatever. So please, not just our shows, but when you watch alternative media, it's important that you share these. If you find a show that you like from a particular person or a particular channel, it's very important that the people in the chat that you share these. That is your contribution. Our contribution is running our mouths and doing the stuff we can do, but you actually have a contribution. Part of it is the conversation you're having in the chat. That's very important to people, but the other part of it is sharing this on all your social media platforms. That's the way you get the message out. Thanks a lot. We're out.